necessary assessments.
Edward Morello.
The Foreign Secretary in his statement outlined all of the steps that this government has taken against the Netanyahu government. He has also repeatedly said that the UK has done everything it can. In my mind, both are tacit admittances of defeat, as we have seen the Netanyahu government increase its activity in Gaza, increase its prosecution and persecution of the Gazan people. My question to the Foreign Secretary is, if we have done so much and had no effect, if there is nothing left to do, what does he expect to change before the UN General Assembly meeting, and why should we not immediately recognise a Palestinian state?
Foreign Secretary.
Diplomacy is failing until it succeeds. So I'm not going to give in to the honourable gentleman's pessimism. And can I just say that in my conversations with Prime Minister Mustafa, after I had completed my statement at the UN, he walked up to me and gave me a warm embrace. We continue to work alongside the Palestinian Authority as we make these fine judgments.
John Pearce.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I welcome the government's decision to trigger the snapback mechanism to address the Iranian regime's nuclear ambitions. Following arrests in May relating to a suspected Iranian-backed terror plot, my constituents in High Peak, and indeed three-quarters of Labour voters, want to see action on the terror threat posed by Tehran on the streets in the UK. Can the Foreign Secretary provide an update on the government's progress in prescribing the IRGC as a terrorist group?
Foreign Secretary.
Well, I'm very grateful to honourable friend for raising this question, and he will know that alongside the Home Secretary, we commission work from Sir John Hall on that specific issue of state threats, and we will be coming forward with further plans in the coming months.
Stephen Flynn.
The Foreign Secretary has just said that on the ground it is unimaginably bleak. Horrifying images and accounts will be seared into the minds of colleagues across this House. They are almost impossible to put into words, but we can and we must be precise with our language. I agree. It's a genocide, isn't it?
Foreign Secretary.
Well, the honourable gentleman joins many. I don't know if he's legally qualified, but I know that there are many lawyers that take that view. As he knows, we made an assessment based on a clear risk of a breach of international humanitarian law that meant that we did suspend arms sales that could be used in Gaza.
Tansing Desi.
Thank you very much, and happy birthday. Madam Deputy Speaker, Benjamin Netanyahu's blockade and weaponisation of starvation has plunged Gaza into famine. And that is why the UN Secretary-General has described this man-made catastrophe as a failure of humanity. And while children die of hunger, unfortunately, we have a situation whereby the Israeli government continues to deny the existence of starvation in the very territory that it seeks to occupy. Now, before the summer recess, my right honourable friend, the Foreign Secretary, informed the House about additional aid for Gaza. Can he inform us just how much of that aid has actually got into Gaza, and what other further urgent steps is the government taking to bring this inhumane treatment of the population of the Palestinians to an end?
Well, can I reassure my honourable friend that the good news is that the aid that we have supported is getting in. Now, principally that has been around medical supplies, and there are medical supplies that are replacing the dire situation that exists in Gaza. But it's also the case that we've been able to work with the World Food Programme, and the World Food Programme appear to be the UN agency that is having most effect at delivering aid on the ground. They're not sufficient, but it is having some effect. I will be in the region in the coming days discussing these issues in further detail.
Kit Malthouse.
Madam Deputy Speaker, another, I'm afraid, profoundly disappointing statement from the Foreign Secretary, devoid of anything that is likely to bring a swift end to this conflict. while at home the police have been arresting vicars and grannies, and the government's been hiring American spy planes to fly over Gaza. As he himself said, the Israelis have intensified that campaign, their aggression and the slaughter of innocents in that awful conflict. And everything he said, all his condemnation has come to nothing. In every statement I've been in this chamber that he's spoken at, he's stressed the importance of international humanitarian law. So my question today is why he's been so passive in defending the International Criminal Court in the face of another wave of American sanctions. What steps is he going to take to support that institution and the individuals that staff it in the face of these sanctions? And what discussions has he had with the American government to get them to reverse them?
Foreign Secretary.
Well, it's just wrong to say that this government has been passive in relation to the ICC. We fund the ICC. We continue to support the ICC. I think I raised the ICC in my second meeting with Secretary of State Rubio. We work very closely with our Dutch colleagues, particularly on the ICC. We've been crystal clear on the importance of international humanitarian law. I'm afraid he's wrong on that issue.
Melanie Ward.
Madam Deputy Speaker, the Foreign Secretary will be aware that increasing numbers of human rights experts and genocide scholars assess that Israel's actions in Gaza equate to a genocide, with famine deliberately created and hospitals bombed to kill journalists. Against this backdrop, the government is right to recognise the state of Palestine and to do so in a way which tries to drive change on the ground. Can I ask the Foreign Secretary, does he share my deep concern at the unacceptable new restrictions on visas and registration set to shut down the work of the most effective international humanitarian organisations in Gaza, and what action is the government taking to try to prevent this?
Foreign Secretary.
Well, my honourable friend is right. It is unacceptable restricting the ability of aid workers to go about their work in the face of such suffering. Can I put alongside her another issue that I'm hugely concerned about, which is effectively starving the Palestinian Authority of the funds also to pay its staff and complete the reforms that we're trying to work with it on, such that it can never get to a position where it can apply the governance that I know that it wishes and hopes to.
Sir Oliver Dowden.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I despair at many aspects of the conduct of the Netanyahu government and the suffering of Gazan civilians. However, I do have grave reservations about the timing of this unilateral recognition of the state of Palestine, because I fear it will allow Hamas to claim that the vile massacres of the 7th of October have somehow succeeded. This is a concern shared by many of my constituents. What reassurance can the Foreign Secretary give about the choice of timing and the signal that that sends?
Secretary.
Well, can I be crystal clear to the right honourable gentleman? Hamas is a terrorist prescribed organisation. There can be no future for them in Israel. When we do the work that I outlined on a framework for peace and on the day after in the region, part of that is how we disarm in Gaza, and part of that is how I suspect those to the left of Hamas exit Gaza, its leadership, and find a third place to be. So there can be no role for Hamas. But given what has been said about the E1 developments, let us also remember what is happening on the West Bank, the settler violence, those who seem totally opposed to two states. And what we sought to do is try and effect change on the ground as we make that assessment. And can I disagree with them? It's not unilateral. Canada, Australia, the French, we are acting together combined to try and bring about maximum leverage to bring about change on the ground.
Paul Wall.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I welcome the government's intention to declare a state of Palestine formally at the UN later this month, something many of us on the Labour benches have been pushing for ever since we were elected, and something that was in our manifesto. It's the biggest shift in British foreign policy in decades, and is a major step forward to giving the Palestinian people the hope that they will have the state that they've long been denied. But while I welcome the sanctions on Iran today, with the famine now formally declared in Gaza, and with 132,000 children expected to suffer from an acute malnutrition between now and next June, can you tell me if the UK is actively looking at fresh sanctions on Israel to prevent that further tragedy?
Foreign Secretary.
Well, I can't comment on sanctions from the dispatch box, but can I know that my honourable friend has campaigned long in his constituency and before on the issue of recognition, and so I'm grateful for his statements in relation to that, and I recognise that the situation I outlined, the situation that I was updated from by Tom Fletcher this morning, is grim, it's dire, it's horrendous, and that's why we have to work collectively with other partners. I'll be back in the region to see what more we can do.
Tim Farron.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. This should not really be difficult. We can, as I do, passionately support Israel's right